Hey everyone, this is Darren Eastman here and Miguel Rincon, Senior Frontier
Oh,
Engineer. We're discussing this overarching topic of runner enterprise management. We're trying to capture as much of our discussions async, but there's so many things to talk about, different iterative approaches. And so we felt let's do a quick sync up and kind of start aligning to maybe a short-term iterative game plan and so on. And then we're going to use this video as sort of a knowledge share for other folks that may be coming along on the project after we're getting going. So as a means for them to catch up with some of the discussion. So, all right. So for today's meeting, I have a couple of things in the agenda. I'm going to share my screen now. Amigo, I see that you've put some things in here as well. But the first thing I wanted to touch on was just kind of brief recap and review of the current Runner Enterprise Management Epic. And I know, Miguel, you've spent a lot of time in the past month or so kind of really digging into the Runner. So I feel as if you're probably an expert now in terms of the Runner. But hopefully this is going through the updated Epic will hopefully be helpful in terms of some context and so on.
yeah.
All right. By the way, Miguel, I'm on a very large monitor. Can you see my screen okay?
I could use a bit of a zoom in.
Let me
Not
zoom in then.
much.
Tell me when to stop.
Yeah, that's all right.
That's good?
Yeah, that's good.
All right. So yeah, I've tried to, so for anyone that's kind of looking at these epics, I've kind of like been thinking and trying to figure out a way to organize this in such a way that it's sort of like bite-sized and manageable, right? And so what I've done in the past couple of hours, business days actually, is change the description of the Runner Enterprise Management Epic by just kind of tagging it as FY22 for now. Just as a way to kind of say, hey, maybe this is kind of what we might want to try to accomplish in FY22. And obviously just sort of to narrow the aperture. And as we continue these discussions, we'll figure out if we need to do anything a little bit different in terms of organization. And then as we get down in the epic, we'll show kind of what's linked in terms of other epics and so on. All right. So I kind of cleaned up the description because when I was looking at it yesterday, I felt that it wasn't pretty crisp. There's a lot of information in there, but it wasn't really like, hey, what are we trying to do? So my proposal in terms of a summary vision is for enterprise management is to provide a first-class experience in the GitLab UI for administering a large installation of GitLab runners for an organization. This is just recognizing there are two long-term visions, right? One vision is that customers that are on GitLab SaaS would not have to manage runners. They'll just be able to use the runners on GitLab SaaS. So this no longer becomes something that's necessary for them, right? The reality is we have customers in GitLab SaaS today that actually still manage a large fleet of runners, even though they're using GitLab SaaS. And the reality is we have self-managed customers, obviously, self-managed instances of GitLab, and they are also managing large fleets of runners. So even though we may have this long-term vision of providing a zero friction runner build solution, that's quite not there yet. So we have to, at least in the interim, kind of think about having a great experience to managing a large number of build systems. So that's the vision.
And when you talk about a large number of runners, are you talking about the hundreds, the thousands, 10,000s?
Yeah, we're already talking about hundreds and thousands. And I had some examples in the previous iteration of this epic, and I took it out, but maybe I'll put it in somewhere else. Most of the customers that we talk to, we're talking about hundreds, and I actually have an action item for myself to define what enterprise scale is. But yes, you're right. Most of these customers have hundreds, maybe thousands of runners. And stepping back, we can probably do some we can probably do very easily, maybe from some of the usage ping metrics, is taking a look at, even on GitLab SaaS, we have some of that data today. So on GitLab SaaS, we know that a significant percentage of our GitLab SaaS customers are executing CI jobs on self-hosted runners, right? So we have that data. We may be able to glean the data in terms of how many runners they have attached to GitLab SaaS at their namespace level. So we may be able to kind of like come up with like, hey, what our target of large enterprises may be, anything bigger than 100 runners or 500 runners. And then go ahead.
The way, so I think the way I'm thinking about it is after we reach a certain amount, we're going to start thinking, we're going to want to start thinking of things a little bit differently. So I think if we're in the hundreds or in the thousands, we're going to be doing certain things in the architecture. But if we happen to be running into tens of thousands, we will probably need some scalability input, or we're going to want to involve performance team members or something like that. So that's just something I want to keep an eye on, because we may run into some limits at some point.
That's a great point. I'm going to just capture an action. I'm trying to figure out what the easiest approach is, but the action is basically we need to get some data around the scale, right?
Yeah. Some assumptions, or we cap the limit. We say, okay, we think we're serving customers or users that are managing thousands, and if you're managing something more than that, maybe we need to make an assumption. We say that maybe this requires more work, or these are the only enterprise features, and we are going to evolve them later, or something like that.
I'm going to put it on I'm going to put the initial scaling assumptions. Well, I'm going to say assumptions. I'm going to say initial examples. I'll put it initial examples. But to your point, we should probably get some real like quantitative data that we can look at. Like generally speaking, GitLab SaaS, we have this much.
Yeah.
But let me just dump the examples in here for now that we have.
I would say if a customer is using 10,000 runners, I would like to find out why, and maybe that's when we stop them. We say, hey, maybe we can find another solution for this.
It's an interesting point, but so I think there's two things to look at. There's going to be a high level for that point. There are two high level vectors to consider. One is the customer and we're looking at this today. If the customer is currently in GitLab SaaS, right?
Mm-hmm.
Are we not serving their needs with the current runner?
Yeah.
That's one view.
Yeah, exactly. That's one way.
Yeah.
And the other view is if we're able to do so much in GitLab.com with our shared runners that are not tens of thousands, how do we do that, and what can we do to help them to get there more efficiently? Yeah.
So I gave some examples in here in terms of the scale. I realize now that I didn't actually capture the number of runners from these examples. But basically,
I think this text I cannot see the doc.
In the agenda doc?
Yeah, in the agenda. I could see on the I could see on my other screen though, so maybe we don't need to worry about that. I don't know.
But that's a great point. So let's just do this. I'm going to take an action, and I'm going to assign myself to that action, and we need to figure out a way for us to actually get measurable data. We need to get measurable data around on the scale of customers runner implementations. Does that sound about right?
Yeah,
both
great.
For SaaS and for self-managed. Okay, that's a brilliant point. So yeah, we're talking about hundreds of runners, and like really fast in one. And I'm going to only for one large customer. I'm not going to mention the customer name. For one large customer, they have thousands of runners, and the reason is they're a large enterprise customer. They have hundreds and hundreds of development teams. So the admin of the GitLab instance, they offer a fleet of runners in Kubernetes, but then each group on the overall namespace, they themselves may have runners attached to it. So there's a lot of interesting scale there. Okay, so back to the epic. So I've got a little section here about target user personas. There's one call out as I was thinking about this last night, and there was some research done by another team. I think we may end up with a different persona in terms of defining a target user. I think it's fair for us to say that Devon right now is kind of is a stand-in, if you will, for the team or the person that's administering either the GitLab instance or the GitLab, if they're on GitLab.com, like the group level.
Okay.
But we may end up with a different persona.
I think to have seen another persona that is administrator of resources, but I can't remember right now.
Let's capture that.
But maybe if you, I mean, if you don't want to focus on that. But
yeah, if you find that statistically in here, I saw some research done. I can't remember if it was in Slack a few days ago. Or
I think it's
somewhere.
a system administrator called
Right.
Sydney. Yeah, so that could be.
Yeah, if you can find that, that'd be awesome. You can pop that in.
Yeah,
I was looking for I was looking for it. I didn't see it on the handbook page yet.
I grabbed it from the proposal. Sorry, from the feature proposal template. I think that's where it is.
Interesting. And that's a good point. So Sydney could be the right one to actually put in here.
I can add it if you want.
Yeah, definitely. Let's go right ahead and add it in.
For now, I'm gonna do that. Okay, save. You should see it now. Yeah.
Yeah, got it.
Yeah, you got it.
Okay. And so we've got that, and so we'll continue. So that's kind of at least giving us a frame for again for anyone else that's coming on board and kind of looking at the project. And then we just go into the jobs to be done, which for folks that are new to GitLab, this is the framework that we are using to talk about the needs from a customer perspective and then flows into requirements. So what I'm trying to do here currently is just, there are going to be more jobs to be done than what's currently in this list, but I wanted to capture an initial bite-sized list for this discussion today, and then we'll continue to add on as we go forward. So the first one is the key one I want to kind of just talk about, which I think might be the one we can kind of use as, hey, can we tackle this one first, knowing that we have a broader vision we want to attain, is when responding to a security incident, I'm Sydney, right? But so let's just assume for a moment in this particular scenario, Sydney is managing a self-managed instance of GitLab. So it's a little bit easier for us to compartmentalize. So when responding to a security incident, Sydney, and maybe Sydney is not a security person, but a security person has called Sydney. Hey, there's a runner registration token that's been compromised. Sydney now needs to be able to quickly find that compromised token. And for folks that I know, Miguel, you're probably much more aware. For folks that are not aware of what that means or what that looks like now in terms of interactions, let's just pop over and have a look at what that looks like. So over here on this, and by the way, since I switched my screens a bit, can you see this runner admin?
Yeah, I can see it. Yeah,
okay,
I can
awesome,
see it.
Great. Cool. So what I have here is two views. So in this view, I'm Sydney. This is the admin screen. In this view, let's assume for a moment, I am not Sydney, I'm Darren. I happen to be a developer that happens to have a project somewhere in this GitLab instance namespace, right? In this particular example, Darren, as the maintainer of this project, right, in Sydney's GitLab namespace, has registered a runner to that project. I'm sorry, Darren has a project in the namespace. In that project, there is this registration token. This is a runner registration token that could potentially be compromised. So the runner registration token today is visible here to folks in this project. So it's associated at the project level. This is the token we're using in order to attach a runner anywhere in the environment to this project, i.e. this instance of GitLab. So as long as you have this registration token, anyone can register a runner against this instance. And so right now I have a runner registered. So in the scenario of the jobs to be done that we were just talking about, Sydney was notified that this token has been compromised, right? Somehow, like, hey, I saw that, Darren or someone else had copied a token and posted it on the company wiki page.
They found it. Yeah, they found it in a video that somebody recorded.
Exactly, like this video, for example, right?
Screenshot, yeah.
Right. And so Sydney's like, oh, okay. Now remember, in this particular scenario, Sydney's GitLab instance is probably like, GitLab SaaS, tons of projects, tons of groups, and so on. If Sydney goes into the current admin view today, it's like, okay, let me try to find that token. Nothing. So let me refresh that screen. So just from the first interaction that Sydney has, or sort of the first vector that Sydney has as an admin for GitLab, using this admin screen, which, by the way, is called runners, Sydney has no easy way to find that registration token associated with that specific project. So Sydney now has to then trying to do some additional investigative work in terms of trying to locate that runner registration token or the project
Yeah.
that runner registration token or the group it's associated to. So that's the first job to be done we would like to solve is, could we simply solve that particular job as a very small MVC?
So
Pause.
yeah, so for, I don't know if you have followed this conversation about the registration token. The thing is that this conversation might be a bit longer, a bit of a bigger topic, but it's about using something else than the token to register a runner.
Right. So, if we had done that path in the future, agree. Yes.
Yeah. So I don't know if this seems to be the bigger concern for customers. I know that access token, no, personal access token. I know that there is a proposal to replace the registration token with the personal access token, but that's a bigger effort. I don't know if you're aware of this idea.
Yeah. Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
So yeah. So we've been talking about the personal access token as one option, and then there's some pros and cons to that. As you can see from the discussion, we're also talking about the broader security changes. But I think in the interim, you're like, hey, before we get to that, can we?
Yeah. Sure. The thing is that right now it's hard to track. So it's hard to track which. Let me think about that. Which where you cannot filter by where the runner is, right? So you want to filter maybe by project, or you want to filter by group or something like that. Maybe.
Well, I don't know. I mean, if we just focus on the job to be done, this first one, we can come up with different ideas in terms of a very simple, should I say, the most iterative way to solve that job to be done, knowing that in the future things might change either in terms of the security architecture, or things might change in terms of what we want to do in this field. That's the initial job.
I'm sorry, I'm trying to come up with the solution on the spot, and that's not
okay, all right.
I know that's not the idea.
All right, so the second one here we want to talk about is it's kind of related to this other one, but less so from a security perspective. So this one, of course, the first one is security. It's like super important, right? The other one is also important, but not as critical in terms of, oh my gosh, we have a security gap, right? Or something is happening from a security perspective. So in a similar vein, Sydney is now helping a developer to troubleshoot issues with a CI job that's failing, right? And Sydney needs to figure out, okay, so your CI job is failing, same kind of thing, which runner is running your job, right? And again, if Sydney comes to this view, there's no way to quickly discern if there's a long list of runners. And for example, let's just use this one as an example. There's this runner, and luckily Darren, who created this runner, at least gave it a little bit more information in terms of the metadata. So this metadata, Sydney might be able to discern that it's an instance level runner, but realistically here, there's nothing in the current data that's available in this view that allows Sydney to quickly determine, okay, that runner, number one, is associated to group A or to group B. And so now Sydney has to go sort of like investigate. So, okay, I can click through, maybe find some more details of this runner, which takes me here. And then, okay, well, who registered this runner? Who is responsible for this runner? Where is it running on? Is it running on under someone's desk, on a local Mac? Is it running on AWS? So you can see that now Sydney, back to Sydney's job to be done, like quickly answering the questions: who registered? Who manages it? Is it an instance level runner? Those questions aren't easily answered for Sydney when the job to be done is to help troubleshoot why a job is failing in the environment. And the other one is kind of a similar vein. When viewing runners associated with a GitLab instance or group, right? Sydney wants to be able to make configuration changes as quickly as possible, right? So again, imagine right now, and this is a new instance of GitLab, by the way. That's why a new test instance, there's only one runner registered. We only got it set up yesterday. I imagine again that Sydney, as part of her day job, is trying to configure multiple instance level runners, right? How would she do so? And so she wants to be able to do so in the most efficient way possible. right? So that's another job to be done that we need to think about for Sydney as we kind of like move down the path. The other thing that Sydney's interested in is, okay, I've got my hands around this massive environment that's GitLab. Luckily, GitLab is growing. I've got thousands of users in my organization in GitLab. I've got thousands of runners. My organizational policies allow for folks like Miguel or Darren to associate runners to their projects, right? We're not disallowing that, maybe in our organization. How many runners are on the correct version? Or should I say the correct version? How many runners are on the most up-to-date version? If my organizational policy is that you should only be one version back, how many runners are on that version? How many are outdated? You can see it in here at a very high level that we at least show the version information to Sydney, but then again, we don't give her any way to quickly discern that total number. Of the 1,000 runners that Sydney may have in this instance, are 513.1.0? Is it 400? Are there runners that are on version 12.9, which is like a whole major release back? Then we get into number 6, which is kind of interesting. And this kind of, so we've kind of moved away a little bit from just being able to understand the runner estate, right? To now stepping into kind of runner performance, right? So when administering runners, Sydney wants to be able to monitor performance of runners and see which teams are using shared runners or group runners, project runners, so that they can proactively anticipate when they will need more capacity. So some of our customers, or like some of the personas like Sydney, they have, just like GitLab.com, they have their own internal service level objectives in terms of how quickly the runner fleet should be able to pick up a CI job and how quickly, on average, a typical job should be executing. And so they need to be able to if their job is making sure that the platform is performing, being able to quickly say, hey, our current our current instance level runner that's an auto scaling run on AWS is at capacity. The jobs from team A, which may be our website team, and they're trying to push out some code to the website right now, are being blocked because of that lack of capacity performance. I want to proactively do something. And so they want to monitor this performance. Now today, let me pause. Today we offer customers a way to answer these questions today with the work we have done with the Prometheus metrics endpoints and Grafana. So we have to think about, are we solving this job to be done already? And maybe it's just a matter of documentation and helping people along. But anyway, the job to be done is basically, do I know if I have to make any changes to my environment in order to ensure that the jobs run performance-wise? And then same thing around performance in number 7. And I want to see pending and running jobs, right? To determine how long jobs may wait to be picked up by a runner. And again, same thing, I want to make runner fleet configuration changes if needed immediately to improve that. I actually think this is actually a duplicate, so let me remove number 8. I just realized I copied number 8 in there twice. So I'll take it out now so it's not confusing. This is what happens when you do late night copying.
Yeah.
I have that twice, so let me remove that because I was confusing myself. And then the last one I put in here for in terms of last night, and again, just a caveat, as I was reviewing all of the linked issues and epics, I didn't want to dump all of the jobs to be done back in the list, so I'll circle back and do that. But I just wanted to dump for today's conversation, put a bite-sized bit into here to start the discussion. And then finally, when administering runners for a GitLab instance or group, as Sydney, again, this is maybe more related to troubleshooting jobs to be done. This is kind of getting into brand new functionality and not just things in the UI, right? And so we'll have to talk about how valuable this particular jobs to be done is for all of our customers. But what some Sydneys have told us is, hey, I want to be able to test the connection for a given runner, right?
Yeah.
There's no way for me to validate right now from this view, at least on this view, that this particular runner is working, is actually able to execute a job, right? I have to take it on face value that things are okay. And of course, if you drill in, I guess go a little bit deeper, you might get to this. I'm going to cheat a little bit. I'm going to pop over to the project view. Luckily, in the project view, there is a little bit of an indication that there's a healthy runner out there by this green thing.
Yeah, yeah.
There is a kind of a signal that it's healthy, but again, there is no way for the admin or Sydney to say 100%, yeah, that thing is actually working, unless they actually execute a CI job attached to that runner. So let me pause there.
Right.
So that's the initial cut of summarizing the jobs to be done. Miguel, I want to see if you had questions or wanted to take the conversation slightly differently before we jump into my other discussion point on the agenda.
I don't think I have anything about that. I think so. Let me just. I think we assume that most of these tasks can also be achieved by group administrators, right?
Yeah. So Miguel.
Or if not, we should point out, hey, this is not groups. This is just admins.
No, I know. Say it again. So we want to assume, we should assume, or should note. Let me catch what you just said. So are you saying we should note that, or most of these jobs should also are also going to be done by group level folks, right? Is that what you said?
Yeah. And if not, maybe we can point it out in the issue or somewhere.
What do we, let me ask you this. Do we have okay, like from GitLab SaaS right now, right? Obviously, when we have an organization, a company that's using GitLab SaaS, and they have control of their namespace, do we use the term administrator of a namespace, and what term do we give that person? So like they're doing stuff at the group level, obviously.
I think it's just group. That's a good question. Group owner, I want to say, but I'm not totally sure.
You bring up a good point. The answer in my mind is yes, because we have to, how should I say, our focus is not just GitLab self-managed, but clearly because of our product strategy, GitLab SaaS as well, right? And then clearly to Sid's discussions and many issues that I've seen, any feature that we develop, we have to think about it being able to be used on GitLab SaaS as well as self-managed. So I think these jobs. I'm sorry?
I lost you for just 1 second.
Oh, yes. I was just saying, basically, yes, I agree with you. I think we have to think that these jobs to be done are valid for both someone who is managing a self-managed instance at the instance level and someone who is looking at it just at the group level.
Yes. But there may be a few tasks that we may not allow group owners. So I can think of the last job to be done, which is to test the connection for a runner. Maybe this can be abused somehow, and then we don't want to give this capability to GitLab SaaS users just because they own a project, that they start testing the connection against a shared runner or something like that.
Yes, I'm just going to add another directly in the issue. This JTBD is likely, how do we want to say that? It's likely, the solution for this JTBD will likely only be available to instance level admins.
Yeah, right.
That's a really good point.
So there's some, I cannot think of it right now, but some that may be a little bit more difficult to manage. So they can only be available for instance level administrators.
Yeah. Super good point. As we go through this, let me know if it makes, I try to make it simple in the jobs to be done list by getting rid of the table structure and just kind of going with bullets. But
no, that's good. That's good.
Yeah, but let me know as we iterate. Yeah, let me know as we iterate if we need to add more detail, but I just captured it as a parentheses right now. I have the next point. So I was just super interested in understanding, again, I'm not a front-end expert or anything like that. I'm just comparing like user experiences with different products. So that's super interesting. If there are any technical limitations in us thinking differently about the approach. And so Miguel, you're up, you have some points to add.
Yeah, I can try to share my screen actually. and I can give you an example of how that looks. If I am able to, wait 1 second. So let me see. Yeah, so I wanted to explain to you a little bit because I know that working with the UI is a bit new for the team. So I wanted to explain to you a little bit how we're working right now in the front end. In the interest that maybe it's easier for you to understand which are the low-hanging fruits, which are a little bit more involved and require a little bit more effort. So if you see this view right now, the admin area runners, this is right now created using Haml. So Haml is a templating engine that Rails uses, and all of this is rendered by the backend. So all of this is rendered server side, and right now a lot of the UI that we are building in the front end is being rendered on the client side. So let me show you. Yeah. So for example, so in here we are rendering almost all of this view. We're rendering it with Haml. So this is all rendered by the backend. This is the technology that we used to use in GitLab before, and right now we're trying to migrate most of the new things that we do. We're trying to migrate them to Vue. The way we do this is by replacing a part of the page with, let's say, like a placeholder, and then mounting the interface that we want to mount using Vue, and then all of this gets loaded by a GraphQL API. So that's why I'm always pushing to get the GraphQL API, because we always want to grab all our data using the GraphQL API, and that's why it takes a little bit more effort to get these things upgraded, and that's why you may see that I may not chase an improvement even if it's small, like, I don't know, aligning this because I want to first replace these components with Vue. Maybe if I refresh the page, you will see it, but you try to look at this little batch. So I'm going to refresh, and then you will see a little bit more clearly. It disappeared a little bit. I don't know if you saw. So that disappeared because we are mounting the Vue component asynchronously, and then this loads the information using a GraphQL endpoint. So this is already using the GraphQL endpoint that Pedro provided. And the idea is to slowly replace all of these components with GraphQL. We can replace them gradually, or maybe we replace a big chunk in one go. So that's how it's working right now. Why we do this? One of the reasons is that I can use GitLab Ui components. I don't know if you're familiar with GitLab Ui. GitLab Ui is one of our projects in the front-end team. And what it does is that it provides components, already made components for many items that we already see. So for example, the filter search, which is one of the big ones that we want. This is already made for us, this component, which contains the search. So this is basically what we will probably want to have to replace this. So this right now is not using GitLab Ui because GitLab Ui would need to use Vue. This is built in another technology using jQuery and Haml, and the new one is using this. So that's why if we want to upgrade this, we will probably want to migrate this to Vue. And if we do that, then we will want to get the backend's help to also give us the new APIs built in GraphQL.
Miguel, quick question. So make sure I'm on the same page. So right now, the search or filter feature here in the UI, this is the old technology using Haml, right?
Yeah, that's right.
And in the GitLab UI components, we have new search components.
Yeah, the new, for example, the filter search. We have many. So we have components, for example, for the table. or if we want to do something else, we have components for the model. So if we want to do this.
So quick question, like for right now, so let's say if we wanted to do the smallest iteration, let's just say simply being able to retrieve the runner registration token. Is it one would build it using, one would simply try to solve that query and dump it into this existing HAML thing, or B?
Exactly.
Okay.
Then we have to make the trade-off. Yeah, then we can decide what's the trade-off. If you ask engineering team, they will tell you to migrate things. If you ask perhaps the product management team, they will say, oh, wait, don't you do the small iteration thing. So there's going to be the two sides always a little bit competing. I think, yeah, I think that the approach of replacing everything with Vue is not necessary for every case, but from what I have seen right now in the runner, I think most of this should be replaced.
So we set the foundation by replacing it with Vue, and then we can start adding in new capabilities, like maybe either A, improving the search results, or B, adding a new attribute to the table.
Exactly. So if you tell me, hey, we need this quick win super fast, it doesn't have to look great, and maybe we can do it right now in HAML. But if we want to continue to improve upon that, then we probably want to switch to Vue.
We want the improvement.
Yeah. So that's why right now we depend a little bit on migrating these things to GraphQL. The good news is that everything we switch to GraphQL becomes part of the GitLab public API. So even our outside, the community, the users that are outside can still benefit. We'll still see these benefits if they start using the API. So all of the APIs are public by default. And yeah, what I wanted to emphasize is that something like this form, we can replace it gradually. So something like this form could be replaced, and we only have to replace this area, for example, this action with Vue, and then we create the APIs that correspond to this update of the runner. And then in a second step or in a separate independent step, we can do the restrict the projects, for example, or show the jobs. So it's not all or nothing. And then it's a little bit case by case. I will tell you, hey, this can be done in one go, or we can do it gradually in this way. I did this a bit as an experiment. Let's load only the batch with GraphQL, and now that's how it's working right now.
One quick question for you then. Hopefully it's a quick question. Obviously, we want to, right now we're hiring a designer to backfill back to the runner team. And we want to have that designer help us with kind of refining the designs for the future views, right? And also then having those designs validated with customers. Ahead of that designer coming on board and helping us do these things the right way, are we okay moving forward with the GraphQL changes and not touching the design, like getting the GraphQL APIs in, migrating the existing stuff as is to GraphQL?
That's part of my proposal. So because I know it's going to take a little bit of time to get the designs, my proposal was basically two tasks. One is to migrate the runner details page to Vue from HAML to Vue. It would be this page. We build what we need to build to get this working in Vue, and maybe we migrated boards and all. So all the things we don't love, we also migrate them. And the same for the admin view. And my idea is that
can you go back to your other view again? We had this.
Yeah, we only have two.
You have admin, and what's the other one?
Admin details. So it's the runner details and the runner lists.
So at the risk of I don't want to scope creep and I want to keep things nice and tight. Obviously, this migrate admin view and the list detail is attached to the admin view category, right? And
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
assuming it's a similar effort for the group view. Do we want to try to get that done as well, even though it's under the
yeah.
group view?
I
Okay.
I hope so. I hope so. It depends a little bit on the APIs that we get, but I would hope so that the same components that we create for this also work in the group. So that's there's an underlying way I will try to make it. So an underlying architecture that will consider the case of the groups at the minimum when I'm building the admin, so that we can load the same type of things for the admin. So sorry, for the group. So when it's time to migrate the group, we can replace things faster than if we create them the first time, for sure.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Yeah. I just one more idea. And what's interesting about these two cases is that they can be done independently, or we can decide to do first one than the other. I think from what I've heard from the conversations is that you are more interested in pushing the list first. So that's the one I'm gonna get the priority. I'm gonna put higher priority on this one for the lists than for the details.
I agree.
Yeah, and we may get small improvements. So just by reworking this, perhaps this area will match the GitLab UI look and feel, but is not currently being used. We're not following the design system, for example, or we may reorder a few things here. And I will run this by Rayana, any changes to the UI, so that she's always agreeing on them, and then we'll push these improvements gradually.
That makes sense. So basically, all we're doing for our initial iteration is changing the underlying front-end architecture to use
Mm-hmm,
GraphQL and the new components, making
mm-hmm,
minor visual tweaks to the
mm-hmm.
existing construct, and then in parallel, we'll be looking at onboarding our designer, maybe even like
Yeah,
getting some of our current ideas that haven't been vetted by design in front of customers, and then from there, we'll come back and see what the design changes are.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah, yeah. And I will make some assumptions based on what we have already. I assume that we will always have a list, and we will always have the runner details. And if that changes, then maybe we'll have to rework more things. But if not, then I think we'll be fine. We will not have to rework much once the UX comes.
That's super helpful. A quick question. I haven't used GraphQL or read up a whole bunch about it. So by using that kind of sort of GraphQL framework, is it more
Mm-hmm.
performant than the old Hamlet technology in terms of how the front end is rendered? Or is it more flexible in terms of just allows it to quickly get, new capabilities
Yeah,
done?
so the advantage, one of the bigger advantage of GraphQL is that we choose which information we load. So if I need this list in GraphQL, I will only request the information that I need. I will only request the ID and the token and the name. And if I don't need the tags, because the tags are not shown for some reason, then I will not request them, or the last contact. Yeah. So there's a lot of information that you can pull in, and that's one of the issues. For example, we have the pipelines right now. The pipelines load too much information, and we don't. If we were using GraphQL, it would be easier to load less. So we're not as stuck, and these changes can be done from the front end. So the front end chooses which data it loads, and then when you see the details, then you can load, let's say, all the other information that you didn't load the first time around. So that's a big difference. If we're doing things by JSON, like with a REST API, there are more changes to be done in the backend every time we want to add a new field or something like that.
Got it. This makes a lot of sense. Brilliant.
Yeah. Yeah, and yeah, I had the note of the feature flags. So these progressive changes can be done also behind feature flags.
So
So
let's talk about that. So feature flags. Why is everything these days behind a feature flag? Should everything be behind a feature flag?
sorry, what's that?
Should everything be behind a feature flag? I need to read
Uh,
the current handbook guidance on that. I'm
uh
just a little bit.
depends how careful we want to be. And and the policy recently is that we have to be quite careful. I think um, we in CI we have to be very careful with the things we change, which is the other experience I have in Verify. Is all the changes are behind feature flags because the CI UI impacts so many users. So we have very little margin of error because any mistake we made is going to be immediately seen by thousands of users. For the admin section, I tend to feel a little bit more. Um, I think we could be a little bit more opinionated and a little bit more aggressive with the changes we make. One, because this is very simple right now, and there's not that much UI. So if we make a change, I don't know, if we replace the IP address and we change the format here, not as many users are going to be impacted. And secondly, this is already not as usable as I think it could be. So it's easier. There's more room to grow, and we're not going to make a mistake as easily. So that's why we're using a lot of feature flags in CI. I'm putting everything behind a feature flag right now in Runner. But if we decide we want to be a little bit more aggressive and go a little bit faster, we don't necessarily have to go through the feature flag. I think some people may not agree with me. So some people may say, no, you of course you need a feature flag for everything. But if we are in this admin section and it has a very specific audience, is the GitLab administrators, then we may be able to get away with changing a few things with the feature flags.
At the very least, we can, as long as we can verify, feature flag is definitely safest. I think for this
Yeah,
view, the only input I would probably want to have before I make that decision would be back to your action item before, which is understanding how many runners folks are generally managing at scale, so that when we look at the changes
yeah.
to GraphQL, we can verify, yeah, it will still perform, right? We're not introducing something all of a sudden it doesn't.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's definitely something to think of. It's a performance. And then also we want to get feedback from customers, and we want to let them use a certain functionality in a certain way. Then maybe we want to also use a feature flag and tell them, hey, how about you enable this and you give us your feedback? That's also another thing.
That's a great point. That's a great point. All right, so I think you have the next one, Miguel. Current screens overview.
Yeah, I just wanted to point out that I don't know how familiar you are with all of this, but we don't have that many screens. So our work is not that much. So this is a list of all the screens we have in Runner. So it's not that many. That's a good thing. So we have uh, the runners list, which looks like this. We may have more runners, so we have the pagination here, and we may have a lot more tags and things like that, but it doesn't change much from what you see here.
Okay.
Then after that, we have the details for a given runner, and as you can see, some things are a little bit strange, like the IP address, I cannot change it, but why is this a field? Something like that. And then you can see the list of jobs that are related to this runner and the list of projects. Then it's the same thing for depending if the runner is a group or the runner is a shared runner. But what we see is basically the same. And then we have the settings for groups and the settings for projects. And then from there, we can navigate to the runner details. So here we have the list of runners in the group. Here we have the details of a runner. And that's it. And that's basically what we offer to our users right now. So there's not much built, but so we can challenge we can challenge all these, and it's easy to rebuild because we don't have that many. Compared with CI, we have many different kinds of screens. Here is not so many, so the work is simpler.
That's good to know. So Miguel, since that's a good segue. I actually injected another agenda item because before we talk about resource bottlenecks under the current screens overview, I think, so if you want to stop sharing, I'm going to share my screen a bit and
Sure.
just talk about some concepts that I've been thinking about. And for folks that are looking at the recording or looking at the agenda, these concepts, how should I frame this? Need to be vetted by both a designer and Miguel, right? But they're here for us, not to say this is what Darren as the PM absolutely wants us to build, but it's just here for us. Darren as PM is saying, hey, just concepts for us to think about the potential approaches, right? And so anyway, so let me share some of my stuff out. And so the first one is, it's kind of simple. And this is where the designer comes in. This is really not that hard. It's really basically, I guess, if we're in the GitLab components, it would look much better, but this is not necessarily anything that's new or innovative. It's simply putting it in a better table structure.
Yeah.
And I guess the only thing here, there's really nothing here. I guess for the detail view, again, this would not be anything that's really different. It would be like, hey, when we have a designer that's on board, they would be designing this so that it matches the GitLab component construct. So I don't think there's anything super interesting here. The only thing to call out on this view is that, to Miguel's point, as we talk about the roadmap, step one is the GraphQL changes, right? GraphQL changes, and the key point is, quote unquote, no major changes to the current UI layout per se, right? Minor tweaks, right? That those GraphQL changes and those minor tweaks will be available to all tiers, right? So because we're not adding any difficulties. GraphQL changes for the detail view and the minor tweaks for the basic detail view, same thing, all tiers, no major changes. And then we get into like, to this, right? Which is what we have to design. Like, so if we need to solve the jobs to be done, and I don't know if this is the way we want to solve it, but if we want to solve the jobs to be done by figuring out a way to show the association of a runner to like a group or project to the admin, we need to solve it somehow. My suggestion is that when we think about solving that, the solution should be something that's only available to premium and ultimate plans. And so in this mockup, I solved it this way, which may not be necessarily something we can do. I don't know in terms of the GitLab components. Again, I have messed with GraphQL, but the idea that I've seen in other products is that as you add certain attributes to a table view, you only enable those attributes for different plans. Don't know if we can do something like that.
Yeah, I will have to get back to you with GraphQL. I would say probably yes. And for the UI, definitely yes.
So, but again, I don't want a solution by presuppose a solution. That's why when we spend the meeting talking about jobs to be done, I want to make sure, Miguel, you and the front-end designer have space to think about the solution.
Yeah. So let me tell you, like, there's no technical reason not to be able to do something like this that I can think of.
And then, so my only key requirement is we want to figure out a nice way to solve the association, but and then the other requirement from a product perspective is how we solve that association should be something that is not available in free by default.
Yeah. I think, so if I want to think about the owner, we don't have this association today, and it wouldn't exist for old runners. It would only start existing for the new runners. And for the association to groups and projects is something that we can already have.
Brilliant. And then the crazy other concept was this. And this was just like thinking about, as we go through the list of jobs to be done, and we start adding more into it. And I know that there was some other work done in the release team where customers didn't necessarily like the concept of dashboard. So I'm trying to use, I shouldn't have used dashboard concept, but do we want to think about a way so that, like right now, if we're here today, so going back to this, right? This gives us this much information. But say customers in the future want to see things like, you know, I want the view to be the runner list view, which is the default, but maybe I want to see the auto scaling views or the maintenance view. Do we want to have a situation where we are creating separate screens for all these jobs to be done in the future, right? And adding them on each and every time? Or do we want to think about an approach where we are setting up a frame? Oh, why is that thing here? We're setting up a framework such that it's configurable by the customer. I know there's this question about configuration over conventional web configuration.
Yeah, yeah. I think
Right? Which is
that's where we can go.
a tricky thing, right? But what I'm seeing in a lot of other related products, not competitors to GitLab, but products that are in the project management space, is that they're coming at it from like Rike, for example, or ClickUp. They're saying, hey, if you want to view your list of tasks and a table, go ahead. If you want to view a list of tasks, just kind of what we do in GitLab as well. If you want to view a list of tasks in a board view, just click here and change that view. And I was thinking if the same construct couldn't apply to GitLab. Oh, by the way, have you seen apps like ClickUp? In Miguel, does it make sense to you?
I came from Monitor. So in Monitor we were doing that was the whole stick.
Oh, and by the way, if anyone hasn't seen it, this is an example. So I use ClickUp to kind of like mess around with different views. And this is kind of what I was talking about. So I'm not again, I'm not wedded to any one idea, but I'm just showing the potential. So as a user, I can go from a table view for my data to like, well, maybe I need a timeline view.
Yeah, right.
Right. And so kind of like thinking about, and then, and this is where I got the, and I'm going to admit, I just, as in GitLab's parlance, we are open to ideas from other folks, right? And so this is why I got this concept of, well, can I have a custom like dashboards? And here you can see they have the concept of you build what you want. And I was like, well, is that something that could be potentially interesting in terms of how we think about evolving that runner long-term vision? And so I'm just going to pause there. And again, those types of discussions are up for Miguel and the designer. And then we have to get those, whatever we land on for the jobs to be done needs to be validated by our customers in terms of validating
Right.
Let me just pause this, sorry.
Yeah. I think, so I would like to take this topic a little bit up the chain of product, because I don't know if, so I've seen quite a few products, quite a few areas of the products that are getting dashboards, but I don't know if we are making them configurable, and what does that mean for the product? Because my understanding of what GitLab does is that normally it's a bit more opinionated about the way it displays information, and it doesn't allow so much configuration for users to say, I want to see things in this other format. So if I would like to check with people in analytics. I think there's project analytics, productivity, and in monitor what they're doing. If the direction of the product is to offer more customization on the views, or if we want to keep it a little bit more opinionated. Of course, the cost of doing it more customizable is bigger, right? You have to consider more ways, so in which the users explode, like these configuration options are explode a little bit the number of possible UIs we can have. So the cost is bigger. So I don't know what's the trade-off there.
No, it's a significant, it could be a significant trade, especially for self-managed, well, for all, because then you have to manage state, right, for all the different views and stuff like that, right?
Right.
So, but if we decide that we don't want M configuration, the only thing then for us to think about, and right now, and for us, the collective us, me, you, our designer is going to come on board, is that right now it's been easy to focus on the low-hanging fruit jobs to be done, like, hey, we just need to get the search done for the token, clean up the thing. But, as we get into the other jobs to be done, it's thinking about, okay, what does the design look like to solve that? Maybe it's, to your point, it's an opinionated one view, but then like, how do we, like, where would it land? Like, would it be a separate menu item? Is it coming off of the detail? Is it a separate dashboard? So we still need to figure what that is, even if it's opinionated, So something for us to definitely to kind of go to the next level.
Honestly, we have so little in our UI right now for runners that I would personally build first the opinionated version and build that, and then see what the feedback is from users to see if they really need this level of customization. Because if we first jump into a customizable way, it's hard to go back, and it will be a very large investment. So
Love that idea,
I'm a
actually.
bit cautious. I'm a bit cautious with that.
Quick question for you then. Let's talk about that for a second, since we have a few more. Actually, we're at time, but can I ask you for one last question?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, since we're at time. That's just kind of that's a really great approach. So let's not waste time on the configuration stuff. Don't burn cycles on that, unless you really want to like just double check and see what people's thoughts are.
Right.
But my question is, if I can find the screen really fast, is, gosh, where is the screen? Oh, here, let me share my screen again. Since we don't have a design, I'm going to kind of take a stab at it and get your thoughts. So right now we've got the, where is the admin area? Runners, right? And then we've got, I guess, this is a list view, for want of a better way. And then we've got the detail. That new screen that we were talking about that has kind of the more of the stuff, like where would you, any ideas in terms of where we might land it? Would it be like a different menu option here? Any off the top of your head thoughts?
For
like that, more like, hey, it's
like
got like
analytics, these analytics are like current states.
But I wonder, I'm wondering if I'm confusing it, because I wonder if the detail view is the place that we just put those additional column attributes, like the jobs that are running for now, keep it super simple. Instead of creating yet still another dashboard with analytics, we just tackle some of the more low-hanging fruit jobs to be done. Like, can I show the number of jobs running on the runner? I don't know, the association. I'm thinking through off the cuff here.
Yeah, I think that definitely the easiest one is going to be to calculate this information when we view a runner. How many jobs did it run? How many jobs didn't run?
I think I lost Miguel. Let me stop sharing.
The state of the system. I think we're gonna need. I will need more input from other people in the team. I'm not
Miguel,
sure.
sorry, can you repeat that? You cut off for like the last minute, half a minute.
Okay, so what I was saying is, if we want to calculate a few things when we see the runner details, like how many jobs have run or how many jobs were run last week, I think it's something very simple, and we can calculate. It doesn't take much investment. If we want to gather aggregate data on something that maybe potentially thousands of runners, I think we're going to need something else that is calculating these aggregates, and that will require a little bit more input from the other team members.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
All right. So I think to summarize, it sounds like we have an approach which is we'll make sure the epics and the issues match up. But I think Miguel's already done the work on it. We're going to do the GraphQL stuff first for the admin views. Knock that out. Any minor tweaks on that in terms of UI changes, we'll get Hannah's feedback. In parallel, I'll be working on getting the data in terms of like how many runners these customers actually have. So we start actually having qualified data. And then what I'll do is we're agreeing that we're going to go no configuration, no customization, opinionated views. So I need to rethink some of the other jobs to be done, maybe some initial mock-ups of those other jobs to be done using an opinionated view. And maybe it's just adding on to the detail view or something. So I'll remove the config, how should I call it? The customizable kind of like brainstorm from the epic.
That's my opinion. I'm happy about that. but maybe you want to get feedback from other people that think that it should be configurable. I'm not sure.
Well, okay, what I'll do is let me double check the other jobs to be done and see if we are addressing those jobs to be done, or we can address those jobs to be done in the detail view. Maybe not the monitoring ones, obviously, or the statistics one. Let me just double check those,
right.
And then I'll see if like, okay, but basically I'll come up with some basic mockups for those other jobs to be done that maybe opinionated, and maybe just give people the option to look at them as, here's option A, here's option B. What does everyone kind of think?
Yeah, I haven't seen that many instances where where we let people, I don't know, if I look at the issue lists, the issue list is the issue list of GitLab, and there's no way to, I want to see it now in cards, and I want to see it in a,
Yeah, and GitLab is definitely not going the opening the configurable option.
and I don't want to see these fields and hide these from, I haven't seen that, so it doesn't feel like something we typically do.
No, we absolutely don't. Yeah, it's definitely not GitLab's way. No,
Hmm.
and that's why I was like, okay, I agree. And I was like, well, I wonder if it could be an interesting way to think about approaching this administrative view, even though it's our right. And the only reason I was thinking about it was, and again, I need to kind of think through if there are other jobs to be done that we won't address with the detailed view, right? But the reason I was
Right,
thinking about it was like in the future, if we had more requirements or more features we want to add, if we had set it up such that it was flexible to begin with versus, okay, now I've got to go add a dashboard with widgets for charts. Then now I've got to insert a
right,
menu
right.
item,
That
you know?
it's going to be definitely more expensive and more taking us more time to deliver something that is more customizable.
So
This is
let's be
for sure.
opinionated and knock it out, be iterative
I
and get something out. Yep.
yeah, that's
And
my
if we have to go
idea.
like add it like a menu item, we will. And then if it becomes something that's super interesting in the future, we could. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, cool. So Miguel, I know this was super helpful for me. I don't know if it was helpful for you or not.
No, it's great. I'm happy I get my word in with these things. So yeah.
Okay, cool. So let's continue the conversation and async, and of course in our run the team meetings, if you feel like we need to get like more of these synchronous discussions on like this, we'll certainly schedule them as need be.
Yeah, sure.
Hey
All
Miguel,
right.
thank you for going over. This was super
Thank you,
good.
Darren.
Cheers. Have a good one.
Yeah, same. Bye.